Hi everybody, thank you for watching another episode of Gaffer & Gear. Today it's a very quick review on this little thing. Now I'm going to call this the Nanlux Wired Remote Control. And the reason I'm going to call it that is because WC/LM6P/C1 doesn't quite roll off the tongue the same. All right, so what do you get for your money? So this is how much it sells for. And they're just some prices I found online recently. So for that money, you get the controller. It comes in a little bag. You get an instruction manual and you also get a cable. One end plugs into the controller and the other end, yes, you guessed it, that plugs into the light. So you've got the multi-pin and you've also got the USB connector. So the USB connector supplies power down the line to the controller. If you're plugging into the 2400B, then you don't need to plug the USB in. There's phantom power on the connector here, but that's not the case with the lights that came before it. Now, if you already own Nanlux lights, that's the Evoke series and the Dino series, you understand what this controller is for. But just in case you're looking to buy some, here's why you might be interested in this. The controls are on the heads. So if you've got the light high up and you're not running the light off wireless control systems like the app or CRMX, or even possibly wired DMX, well, then you can't get to the controls. So this essentially replicates the controls. Now on the 2400B here, you just need to plug in the one cable because there's phantom power coming through that connector. So you don't need to plug in the USB. There's no harm in doing it if you do. Now, anything that's on the display here will be replicated on the screen on the controller. Okay, so any inputs I make here on the controller, the light will do. Any inputs I make on the light, that information is also immediately replicated on the controller. So it doesn't matter where your control inputs are coming from, you're not going to have any conflicts. All right, now just something to point out with this controller. All it is doing is replicating and mimicking the control area. That's all it's doing, the user interface and control. It is not saving any information on the device. All right, now let's see if it works on the 900C. Now, as you can see, the control is dead because I haven't plugged in the USB power. Now, about a second and a half later, everything that's on that screen will be replicated on this one. And now I have control over the light. And again, whatever input I put into the controller is on the screen on the light and vice versa. Okay, now let's have a look at it with the 1200B, and works perfectly. Now with the 1200B, you're going to need to plug in the USB connection on the light to get power through to the control box. Now if it doesn't work with the 1200B, just go to the Nanlux website and download the firmware again, because you need the latest version of the firmware for it to run. If you think you've already got the latest firmware version, it doesn't hurt to double check because there was a bit of a mix up with the firmware version numbers with the 1200B recently. Now, if you don't have the correct firmware in the light, the display will actually tell you that that's the problem on the controller. Okay, let's go through pros and cons. Okay, well, one of the pros is you're not having to learn things from scratch. It's the same user interface. The buttons are a little bit different. So for example, compared to the 900C, we don't have the presets button. On the 2400B, we don't have the effects button. And yeah, we don't have the effects button when compared to the 1200B. So the buttons are different, but the menu is the same. So you can go to your functions such as your effects and your presets in the menu, but the user interface, what's on the screen, is identical, so you don't have to learn everything from scratch. The next pro is it has a built-in magnet, so you can clip it onto your light stand so you can find it. And the next pro for me is the length of the lead. It's 8 meters, so that's more than enough to get to the top of your highest stand and more than enough for the average boom arm or even menace arm. Okay, let's get into the negatives now. And the big overwhelming negative for me is this is not weather resistant. I think that is a big oversight. Now, the next negative for me, hopefully this is just a temporary one, is you can't buy the cable separate. So why have I got that as a negative? Well, let's think about this. If I've got 3 lights that are up high and I can't operate them, I don't need 3 controllers because there's only one of me. But if I had 3 cables hanging down from each light, I could just walk over to the light that I want to operate, plug it in, wait 2 seconds, and then make my adjustments. Now that makes a lot more sense for me, especially given the fact that the controller is not weather resistant. I don't want to leave it outside on a stand, even with a plastic bag over it, and hope that it doesn't rain. I'd much rather have the one controller in a pouch on my waist and pull it out when I need it. So for me, I think ideally, loads of cables, maybe 2 controllers, one for me and one for my assistant. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the product. See you on the next episode of Gaffer and Gear. Take care.